Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Two Average Brown Bros podcast. I'm your host, Brishank,
And I'm your host, Andres.
and today is Monday, September 6th, 2021. Andres, what's up, man?
I know I've been talking a lot about this, but finally got started with my master's program. So last week was the first week of classes. And, it was very exciting getting to know my classmates. Classes over here at McGill, at least for my program, they're in person. So a little bit, I don't know, it was like sometimes like a surreal experience because we are all still wearing masks. So it was like we're back, but still under like weird conditions. But other than that, I would say the past week has been fantastic, and I'm loving it. How about you, man? What's up with you?
Been in Ottawa a couple weeks. My brother joined me here. He'll be starting University of Ottawa. Um, and then my parents also came down to, help settle him down, and then just see me and my family. I mean, my cousins here. So it was nice having them. But then they'll be going back to Regina, so they'll be, missing me and my brother. Lived with them for pretty much all our lives, and especially with the pandemic, that's one thing that I'm appreciative of, that we got to spend so much time together as a family, and not everyone has that privilege. So being able to spend the last year and a half just working together, doing small family road trips and all that, super nice, super. So now it's going to be quite the change for my parents from going from that to just the two of them, and they're 3 provinces away, but the birds gotta fly out the nest, right? So they'll get used to it. But now they have a reason to visit the eastern Canada a little bit more. So I think it should be fun.
Hey, man, that's right. Like, at the end of the day, sometimes we just gotta like spread our wings and fly. That is such a cheesy phrase, but whatever. But also, I think like not only for your parents, but also for you and your brother. Like, it's a different pace. You've been with your parents for a long time, and now it's time. I mean, you're used to it because of university, but now a couple of provinces away, that might be different. So it's like I think a time to adapt, both for yourself and also for your parents.
Absolutely. So we'll take it I think this is one of my favorite phrases of the last year, but we'll take it day by day, and then hopefully, my parents can eventually move here. If not, we'll visit them, they'll visit us, so it should be good.
That's nice, man. And yeah, I don't know. Many people have been using that phrase lately. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
So Andreas, what did you learn this past week?
what did I learn this past week? Um, so like I said before, I'm gonna try to keep it outside of the academic world because I don't want to bore anyone with stats. Not everybody's a fan of that. But outside of school, something that I learned today, like this past week, actually with some of couple of my classmates, we went over to the botanical gardens over here in Montreal, which were fantastic. I mean, I've been to the botanical gardens before, but every single time I go, there's something different. So this time it took a little bit more time to read the signs, learn a little bit more about the plants and all of that. So learn a couple of things here and there of some plants, and I learned what lily pads some of them might look like because we were in a pond, and I'm just like, I'm pretty sure those are fake. And then a classmate was just like, no, that's actually what lily pads look like when they keep on growing. And I was like, what? No, you're kidding. This is totally fake. This is plastic one. And no, we started researching and I learned more about lily pads. So some of them have pretty cool shapes. And for some of them, lily pads start going flat and then they grow up like upwards, like if they had walls, and they have spikes on the outside as like protective mechanisms for like from like animals jumping inside of them, which was pretty cool and like honestly pretty neat. So yeah, learned a lot about flora and all of that over at the botanical gardens. How about you, man? What is something that you've been learning for the past week?
This past week, well, one thing of note that we did come up to Montreal, so we got to see each other for the first time since we both moved to the Eastern Canada. So that was super nice. Andreas was a really good guest or host. Sorry, we were the guest, but he took us around Montreal. Just a local old Montreal, and like by the piers, the waterfront, and then we walked all the way to his apartment, which is super nice. So if any of the listeners want to come crash at his place, you'll have to ask him, not me.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta ask first.
Yep. But that was very nice. But besides that, so recently, I've been super addicted to Pokemon Go. Yes, Pokemon Go. I first started playing in 2016, 2017 when it first came out, and then I stopped playing for the longest time. But then recently, for the last couple of months, I've been super into it, and just trying to like it's actually pretty intense where there's so many things you can do. But for me, I just want to complete my Pokédex. But once I get into something and once I'm addicted to something, I go hardcore on it. So these days I've been going on Wikipedia and looking up like the Pokemon franchise because the last ones I really played was like Ruby, Sapphire, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Emerald, back in like 2003, 4 when it first came out, and then onwards. Since then, it was super hard just to keep up with all the Pokemons that came out and even now, getting back into Pokemon slowly. There's so many Pokemons that I've missed because for me, playing up to those generations, I only knew like 350, maybe a little bit more. But now there's almost like 700 Pokemon, so almost double from what I know. And just getting into it has been a learning experience and a curve. Like it makes me really want to buy like a Switch or like a Nintendo DS. But then I'm like, besides those games, will I really play anything else? And with those games nowadays, it almost seems it's more fun, when if your whole like group of friends play. And I don't know if any of my friends actually play Pokemon these days, so it's kind of hard to get into that. But who knows? Maybe I'll buy a Switch and play Pokemon Go or Pokemon on the Switch. But I think, my learning experience for the last couple of weeks has just been around Pokemon. I know that sounds super nerdy, but, it brings back so many childhood memories because when I was a kid growing up in New Zealand, after school, I would go home and watch Pokemon, from 3 to 3:30 every day nonstop. And then, growing up, getting a Game Boy Advance SP for like one of my birthdays and playing that, all throughout middle and high school almost. I love Pokemon, and it really brings me joy because it's one of the first games I really got into as a kid. And even now, nothing's changed really except for new Pokemons. It's still a cool adventure. So yeah, that's it's been more of an internal learning experience and getting back to it, but that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last week and more than that.
Nice, nice, nice. We love to see it. And I remember when Pokemon Go started being a huge thing. And yeah, some of those games, they really can be very addicting. So, as long as like, I mean, you're probably spending a lot of time on it, but as long as there's some sort of balance, I'll approve of it.
Exactly. So you know what? As long as it makes the day go by, and you know what? It's also making me walk around a lot more because you get different like achievement things if you walk around, and you obviously catch more Pokemon. So if it helps me get out of the house a little bit more, I'm all for it.
There you go. Get those steps in.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, well, I guess it is time to move on to our topic of the week. So, Brishank, are you ready for this week's topic?
I think I am, but remind the listeners what we're talking about this week.
Alrighty, so this week, a couple of weeks back, almost like I would say even a month or more back, Brishang decided that it was time to get personal and deep with me. So we talked about myself, which I mean I'm not gonna complain about that. But today we're flipping the table. So today we're getting personal and close with Brishang and getting to know him a little bit more so that you out there you get to know Rashang a little closer and get to know the person that I've been calling my best friend for a while. So you ready? You're ready to get there with us, Rashang?
I say, let's get it on.
All right, buddy. So let's start something light about it. So Brishang, I know we've talked about our move or anything, but tell us like a little bit about what life and your journey has looked like for you.
This. I know this question was going to come up, and every time you go to like an orientation for university or work, or you meet someone new, I say the same story, and I love to say it every time because it really defines who I am. So, I'm going to give you the basic version that I tell people, and then we'll delve into a little bit more.
Sounds
So,
good.
I was born in Nepal, and then I lived there for around 6 years, and then I moved to New Zealand, lived there for almost 2 years, and then I moved to the United States, lived there for around 5.5 years, and then for the last 12 years, almost 13, I've been in Canada, the Great White North, aka Canada. I've lived in 4 different countries. Those icebreakers where you have to say two truths and a lie. Well,
Yeah,
that's my go-to. Obviously, I
yeah.
can't use it anymore because everyone knows that's the truth. But that's just me in a nutshell, pretty much. And I really, so that's a basic version of it. But the deeper version is that literally, like, all those places I've been to and I've lived at, it defines who I am because Nepal, my roots, my parents are from there, my relatives all are from there. I was born there. I went to first first couple years of school I went to Nepal, and then I went to New Zealand. So my first introduction to like the Western world, even though New Zealand's in the Eastern Hemisphere, I guess. But my first introduction to like the language, English language, and just going to school, outside of Nepal, and then moving to America. Big change. So right, going from one of the smaller countries in the world to one of the largest and the most prolific in so many ways. Living there, growing up there, and then coming up to the smaller brother, like not physically, but in other ways, I would say Canada is the smaller brother of the U.S. And just living here and growing up here more, and starting my own life here. I think it's been an amazing journey.
Man, that is incredible. It's so nice that you're like you are able to pinpoint in each country what kind of like what it has meant for you in your life. So that's awesome. So let's delve a little bit into that. So I know you live in Nepal, New Zealand, but that happened when you were like on the younger side. But you were a bit older when you came to the States. So how was that? How was life in the States? Take us on a journey with you.
All right, so the U.S. I moved there in 2003, so I was just 8 years old. My brother was just 7 months old when we moved there as a family. My dad got a scholarship to do his PhD in Washington State University. So it was a small town we lived in. The population was only 27,000. So it's not anything like New York or Seattle or Chicago, anything like that. But you know what? I think it was a perfect place for me and my brother to grow up because it was a university town, so it was a little bit more diverse than some of the smaller towns in the U.S. And I think growing up there really helped me because I learned so much there, and the diverse set of friends I had in the U.S. Like I know sometimes you can see U.S. isn't diverse in some places, but like Pullman was really diverse. I grew up with so many other kids from I have my best friends or like my close friends at that time were like from Kenya, China, India, Mozambique, Tanzania, so many places from the world. We would all would go to school together. There was 3 elementary schools, but even though the other friends that went to other elementary schools would all come back around the same time and just like hang out there, getting up to no good until like 9, 10, 11 at night. I remember some of the days, I'd stay up so late in the summer months that I would get in trouble because I would tell my parents, I'll be home right away, but I ended up staying late until like 10, 11. And but it's also one of those places where people are moving around because they're like most of their kids' parents, they're also like students or PhD students, master students in the university, so they're always coming in and out. So most of my friends, they moved around. Once their parents finished their PhD, they moved on to other cities or moved around, found a job. So for me, going from like a couple of my friends that were there for all the 5 years, but some of my close friends that I lived close to, they were only there for a year or 2 years. Others would come in, go out, so I think that's one of the harder parts of moving around so much and being a kid of a university student. It's especially when you live in like university house style apartment housing, it's your friendships are always on rotation. And back in the day when you're young, especially back in the day when you didn't have iPhones to like connect with people, you didn't have Facebook to connect with people, it made it a lot harder to connect with people once they moved. Of course, now we can go back and add all those friends, but I think that was really cool. Also, the US was my first like introduction. Like I did play sports before the US, so I played cricket and a little bit of rugby and soccer. But after I moved to the States, that's really when I got into the NBA, NFL, MLB, all these more sports that are prevalent in North America. So I fell in love with sports even more than I did previously. Met so many people, and and of course, my first real introduction to snowfall. Like having grown up in Nepal, where I didn't live in the mountains, and then New Zealand, where I lived in the North Island, where it didn't snow that much or that often. That my first winter, it was a lot of snow, and I was going sledding or snowball fights. Everything that comes with that first snow that you see, it's amazing, right?
Oh, that's incredible. Sounds like a good. I mean, it sounds like you had a pretty lovely time, and I mean, it comes with its challenges, but I guess it's like such a nice story, and getting to know a little bit more about it, and it definitely like it does have an impact depending on where you grow and like the conditions and all of that. But I think it has made you the person you are now. But so coming to Canada, what would you say is one of those things that you miss about um, growing up in the States down in Washington?
I think so. Again, this is a two-parter. One of the biggest challenges that I had moving from the States to Canada was that I moved halfway between grade 9, so like first and second semester. So, you know how high school is. All the cliques are formed, all the groups are formed. People are into their sports group or their like nerdy groups or whatever. Math club, debate club, whatever it is. So, having moved to Canada between first and second semester of grade 9, it was super hard to make friends at first because everyone had their friend group, and even it was even harder because of the fact Saskatchewan, as we both know, is pretty white dominant, right? So there's not much diversity. I remember like first coming to Saskatchewan and going to school, like us people of color were definitely the minorities, and especially brown people. Like I could count on them how many brown people were on in my grade, which was way less than what we had back in the States. So I think for me, the diversity I definitely missed of the U.S. And I think when I first came to Canada, just a warm welcome that I received when I moved to the States, it wasn't as prevalent here. Just because in Canada, especially a place like Saskatchewan, where it is white dominant, it's a little harder to make friends at first. So going from meeting so many people, having so many friends, to pretty much zero friends for the first couple of months of school was a big culture shock for me. And then on top of that, just you know, so when we moved from Ohio to Regina, Saskatchewan, we drove. It took us 3 days. We made several stops, but every stop, every day, every hour, it got colder and colder because we moved on December 31st, 2008. And when we finally got to Regina, Saskatchewan, it was like around 10 o'clock at night, and it was around -40, -50 with a bunch of snow on the ground. And us four, me, my parents, my brother, we all, my brother was still young at that time, but my parents and I looked at each other. We're like, "Is this it?" Like when we saw Canada, we obviously, and not just me, but like everyone thinks of Toronto, Vancouver, maybe Montreal. But like Regina, Saskatchewan, no one's heard of that before. Even when my dad was looking for jobs up in Canada, we researched Regina, Saskatchewan, and at that time, one of the first things that come up, even now, is the fact that the crime rate in Regina and Saskatoon is so high, right? Per capita, obviously, but that's one of the first things pop up. So that already had scared us. But when we saw -50, -40 outside our car, it was like it was a big cold welcome to us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like it's surprising when like that's the first thing that comes up, right? Is like the crime rate. Because you like whenever everyone thinks about Canada, it's like, oh my god, so peaceful, nice people, nothing really happens up there. And then you go to Saskatchewan, it's like, yeah, per capita the crime is pretty high, one of the highest in the country. And it's like, well, I don't know how to deal with that information. Uh, but I don't know. You and your family were brave enough to come over in the winter, man. I don't know how like someone coming right into the -40 weather of Saskatchewan is able to stay put with all of that. So props to you and your family being able to do that.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. So
That is fair. So high school and then university over in Saskatchewan. So tell us tell us about that university experience for you, Brishank. What did that look like? What are some of like it's a multiple question, so we'll make it a multiple parter. So what was that experience like for you? What are some big takeaways that you had? Uh, um, and how did university shape you in terms of like where you are right now in life?
Yeah, so one of the bigger shocks for me personally was moving to high school in Canada because especially now looking back, it's like people make fun of the American education system, but looking back, the clubs available in like high school in the U.S., the clubs and the sports athletics is just on the next level compared to Canada. So like in Ohio, I was part of the debate club. You had to actually try out. So 300 people try it out, only 70 people make it. So coming from that kind of culture to high school in Canada was super laid back. There's not as many clubs, and even like in the US, obviously, if you want to go to university, you have to take the SATs or the ACTs. Here, none of that, right? So like in the US, I had previously taken the ACT because at that time I thought I was going to live there, getting prepared for that. And then coming here, you don't have any of that, and you just apply for universities. And some that universities don't have either entrance average are super low, like Regina, it's like 65, 70, 80%. So it's not as competitive. But I think that's a pros and cons because of university system, that because Canada, I feel like it is more standardized. So whether you go to University of Victoria, University of Regina, University of Ottawa, McGill, for the most part, the undergrad studies are pretty standard. So I did engineering, as most people know. So most of the people I've met through work have same baseline of engineering skills. Some people might be just innately smarter, or like they know more, but the level of education, no matter where you go in Canada, it's pretty much the same compared to most of my friends that go in the States. If you go to Harvard versus like a low tier university, the difference is pretty prevalent. And I think university, I think that's where I really enjoyed in Canada, because there's not as much pressure as the US, where you have to do you have to do all these extracurricular activities just to get in. And then even going to university in America, I think it would have been so crazy, right? Like we hear about the frat parties and sororities that happen, the hazing and stuff. Like I never experienced that in Canada. It's like, especially in Saskatchewan, a place like Saskatchewan, like maybe in Toronto, BC, where it's a little bit more Americanized, they have that, but Saskatchewan doesn't have that. And so my university career actually started me going to University of Regina for my first year to do arts and sciences. At that time, I wanted to do, in the long term, I wanted to be a doctor, because that's where the money is. But then as I took arts and sciences, and I grew older, I realized that ain't for me. Like as nice as money is, like I'm not passionate about medicine to do that, and especially go for school for that long. So then I transferred into U of S civil engineering, and I think that's where I had to make a decision, because initially after high school I had gone into aerospace engineering in Carleton and Ottawa, actually. So it's all coming full circle now. But I think the market for aerospace engineering is pretty hard to get into for jobs, and it's selective, especially in Canada. So then that did make me choose civil engineering, because then I could eventually go into airport planning and stuff. But I think it's kind of, then of course we'll talk about work later, but like I think university, and I've said this in the past, I wish there's a little bit more flexibility on classes, but that's a topic for another day. But university in Canada, it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people, especially being an RA and SRA for 2 years. It was a lot of fun just meeting people from so much parts of the world. And for me, I think that's been my greatest like privilege and blessing in my life. It's just, even if I've been in one place for a super long time, so Saskatchewan, I've been in here for 13 years. I've been privileged enough to meet so many people from so many parts of the world and just listen to their stories, and just making connections all over the world. I That's my favorite part of university.
That's amazing, man. And yeah, definitely. Like I would say, even though like people compare a lot of the States with Canada, I think when it comes to post secondary and even like secondary schooling, it is different in a way. And our university experience do differ from time to time. And yeah, university, like you said, university can be a lot of varied experiences. So, you mentioned that you met people from several backgrounds, and I can attest that at USAS, even though it's the province itself is predominantly white, there's still some diversity and more within the university setting. So, what are some of those experiences that you got that like in a certain way impacted you, like with meeting people from different backgrounds?
I think it's just the stories that we hear from other people, right? Like, so first year, first year we met a lot of people, but I think where I really blossomed as a person was when I became RA, because it took me out of my shell, and just having to learn, that we're pretty privileged in Canada, that so many people have it so much worse. Of course, that people have it better, but for the most part, we're so lucky to live in a place like Canada, and with all the pros and cons that come along with Canada, I think Canada is definitely one of the better places I've lived in, I've been to. And that's the thing with people that I met, and they've like kind of said that to me, whether they're from Norway or India or Singapore, right? It's Canada is definitely one of the nicer places to live for a reason. Like, there's always a reason Toronto, Vancouver are always in the top 10 cities in the world to live in. And it shows because just the kindness that Canadians show each other and the compassion. Like, I don't think, I might be a little bit biased, but you don't see that anywhere else in the world.
That I would say that is true. There's an element of truth to that statement.
Absolutely. And it goes even further because of diversity Canada has. I mean, that kind of contradicts what I said earlier about Saskatchewan not being diverse. But university, I feel like for the most part, no matter where you go, is fairly diverse, right? You always have international students and exchange students, and it's like university is really where you can be yourself. And like high school is tough for a lot of people, right? You have to always be cool to like kind of fit in. You're always being judged by other people. It's kind of hard for a lot of people. And even like the cool kids, they have to act a certain way to fit in. But in university, you don't have any of that. You can literally be yourself. And I think that's where I really shone, because you know what, I'm not the most normal person, in a sense where I like to do my own thing. I'm a little bit quirky here and there. And university really made me do that, where I could be myself, and I didn't care. I simply didn't give a fudge. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people do. It is stressful. I'm not like not gonna make it sound like a cakewalk. University can be stressful, but when you find those close people that you can rely on, that you can study with, and then you can talk to for hours, it really helps.
Oh, absolutely. Like I mean, like you mentioned, university give it like it does give you that is open space. Everyone is exploring, but at the same time, you figure things out. So something that you've mentioned not only today but throughout different episodes is that transition from yourself, from being an introvert to being an extrovert. So, Rishank, what did that look like? And we know like what when did that change happen? And I know keep on bringing it to like what how it defines you today, but what what did it mean to you to come to that point in your life that you're like, you know what, I'm an extrovert.
So I think, like, going back to the story of me being an RA, like at first I really didn't want to be an RA. I wasn't ready to work during school. I didn't like, it just turned me off. But then, as always in my life, I just need a little bit push to get like in that direction. Whether I like it or not, that's for me to decide. But it always, like, I'm the person that needs a little bit of push to do something. So at that time, when I was deciding if I want to be it or not, my parents like, just try it, and if you don't like it, you don't have to be one next year. And I signed up. I got the role, and I think it was almost like thrust into that spotlight where I had to be leaders to students that were first years as a second year, right? So, and of course I wasn't a true second year because I had already done a first year University U of R. But at the same time, it made me realize that people are relying on me for whatever it is, whether it's a student that needs help at 3 a.m. in the morning, or it's someone that just needs life advice, or just wants to talk, or vent to someone. And I think that's where I really shone, because I love, like I said, I love listening to people, and and I love giving advice. Of course, people won't always follow your advice, and they shouldn't, because you can't really tell what the other person's feeling and what they're going through. But like, I don't, obviously you guys can tell, but like, I love to talk. So when someone comes to me and talks to me, I can talk forever. And I think that's where I kind of blossomed, because they made me realize that, hey, like, people need me. People, want to come to me. They trust me. they need my guidance. And I think that's kind of where I like started snowballing. And as I progressed in my university career, as I became closer with certain types of people, or like closer with just my engineering friends, it became evident like I had like this doesn't sound super like narcissistic, but I had that like leading type of abilities, right? So like whenever we wanted to plan something, whether it was for engineering like work or social life, I'd, I'd usually take charge and be like, you know what, let's do this. Because a lot of people, you know, a lot of people love being diplomatic. And, I think a lot of my close friends know this. But if I ask you a question, I usually want like a straight answer. I hate people like that are wishy-washy or have diplomatic answers, because it's like, that's not being real. Like, I know you want to make others happy, you want to make multiple people happy, but I honestly like being more straight up and being honest with something. And that comes along with, being a leader. It's like, if you feel passionate about something, you should say it, and you shouldn't just be like, we're super wishy-washy about it. And since then it blossomed even more, where I would plan trips with a couple of friends, and I just take charge. And I think planning trips, that's where I really found my love of traveling, because I like to take charge. There's different things I want to see, so instead of relying on other people to do, like, say, let's do this, I'll be like, okay, here's a general plan, let's do this. If you don't want to do this, we can change it around. So like, just like the whole planning, organizing different events, and then organizing group projects for engineering, I think that's where I shone. And at times it was hard, because it's like, I was still an introvert at heart, but I was put into that spot, I was put in that position by myself, where I really blossomed, I think. And even now, like, I don't think I'm fully extroverted, because at the end of the day, I do get super exhausted with people all the time. And that sounds rude, but that's just the person I am. It's just I can't, I need a break from people. And so as much as I am extroverted, I am sometimes super introverted as well. That side of me still comes out.
Hey, and I think it's okay. I mean, having time to yourself, I don't think it's a bad thing. And certain people like don't like to think about that way, but it is nice. It's like a time to recharge. And that's, I think, the main difference. You really enjoy your time around people and talking and all that, and some of us don't. So, or like we're more comfortable with other people than with certain people. But that's amazing, and like I mean, that's one of the things. And like I wanted to for you to talk us through it, just so that our listeners could listen to, like, you don't really have to be bound to one type. We live in a world that everything is so binary. Like, is it true or false? Is it white or black? And in this case, is it an introvert or an extrovert? So, I mean, I need a story, but I wanted you to talk about it just so everyone can listen, that it's okay to be either or from a moment in your life, you were something, and then slowly different things happen in your life, and then you start transitioning into like another one. And that is completely okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, Brishank, you've mentioned the array experience a lot. So, of course, I'm not going to let it slide. One, because you mentioned it a lot. And two, because I was part of that journey with you. So, um, so Brishank, what would you say outside of like giving advice and helping others within that time at USask? What is one of your craziest stories? Like crazy RA stories, keeping it confidential. What are some of the crazy stories you want to share with us?
I don't have the craziest, but I do have like some crazy ones here and there. The first one being one of my first shifts as an RA. I think you remember this too, because I tweeted it and I like put it on Facebook. But the laundry room flooded. My first shift as an RA, one of the laundry rooms in the residence is flooded. So my first shift, and this already happened. So I'm like, oh, it's going to be a long year. So that was super interesting. It wasn't that exciting, but it was interesting because it's like, okay, first day in, we already have an issue. And then a couple of crazy ones, like the usual is always like, first years getting too drunk and passing out in the bathroom, or, people running around the halls. But definitely one of the more interesting ones that we both faced was the kids jumping and making holes in the ceilings. As they call it, they would play Mario, where they would break the ceilings. Definitely one of the more interesting problems that we had. And Honestly, I'm drawing a blank on so many. I know we had so much, but like definitely, I think one of the hardest thing about being an RA was just trying to find that balance between as a student, because you're still a student, you're still trying to have fun, but then you're also an RA, you're supposed to be a role model for everyone. So as much as I like to party and go out and stuff, you still have to keep it somewhat professional in front of your friends and your residences. But then it's like, well, I still want to party because I'm still a student. So always trying to manage that balance, I think it is crazy and hectic, because I think that's where I learned to draw the line between being an RA and a friend, because there's so much drama when you're an RA, and because you're leading pretty much kids your age, a little bit younger than you, and that's where lines get crossed. It's like, well, I'm talking to you as a RA right now, but then you go the next morning, you're like, okay, you're my friend. So being an RA is filled with drama, but it was a lot of fun, definitely.
That's yeah, I know. Sometimes it is such an experience, and yeah, there's some well ones I hated when they were punching the ceiling tiles. When you were just talking about the floor being the laundry room being flooded, that is true, and also I'm pretty sure you had the first shift out of the entire year. So I'm pretty sure that our first year as RAs, you had the first shift, and I'm pretty sure I remember who you were with working that night. So I don't know. Sometimes memory works that way.
Yep.
Things that
Yep.
you think don't remember, and then someone says something specific, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember
Yep.
that." So yeah, so Brishank, so just just to get a little bit more intimate, so kind of like I don't know, just so that everyone can understand the level at which kind of like our friendship and everything was at and how it developed. Do you mind sharing kind of like how many times did we stayed up late talking with each other?
I mean, there's a reason we started a podcast together, right?
Yeah, that is very true.
But well, our friendship has been pretty interesting, because first year, like we had completely different friend groups, and like we would see each other, but I don't think we really talked besides the occasional hi, hello in the res halls, because we both lived in residence the first year, obviously. But we had completely different group of friends, so it wasn't too intimate. But then our real introduction to each other was when we both got into the RA role, and we had the summer training sessions, and just getting to know you more. And then just like when you're together for 15 days straight for pretty much 24/7, you get to know people pretty well. And like I think that's where you and I clicked, because we also did lots of events together, whether it was a FIFA tournament, or even before that we did the ALS bucket challenge, when that was a thing that was happening. I think it was just a fun time where we actually got to know each other, and like we realized, hey, we're pretty similar, and that's where it really blossomed, because second year, we were RAs, and then we became closer and closer, and then we'd play on the same volleyball rec team and just go to meals together all the time. Like I think that's one of my favorite parts of our res is like it is a small community, and you get to know so many people, but some people you become a lot closer to. Of course, other people you drift away for various reasons, but I think you and I stayed pretty close for the most part. And then as we got into third year, even closer, because we were both senior RAs, and did we were pretty much together every day, I'd say. And then and having those long night talks, I think it helped both of us, because we're both like we both came from similar backgrounds, similar values, and just getting to know each other on a deeper level, being there for each other. Like I'm not exaggerating when it's like it was almost like a daily thing. We'd like talk to each other for until 3-4 a.m. in the mornings, and that helped a lot, because I had my engineering friends and my other close friends, but I didn't live with them, so I didn't know them as personally as I did know you. Whereas we didn't have classes together, so we couldn't relate on a school level, but I think we related on a more personal, deep level. Whereas even some of my close friends in engineering, as much as I love them and I'm close with them, I don't think I've ever reached that personal level that I did with you.
Hey, and that is where I mean, having like I don't know, there is something about midnight or past midnight talks that they just get you to a point of vulnerability that I don't know what it is. But yeah, no, definitely we had a pretty interesting relationship, and I think I don't know, it's one of those things that it was just literally timing. So that is amazing, and I'm glad that we're able to keep on being friends. So with that, let's keep on moving down the Brishank timeline of life, because but you have lived a life. So uh so traveling, let's move into that part of your life. I know you mentioned that you discovered that traveling is really where your happy place is at. So what is it about traveling that sparks that joy in yourself?
So one thing I really hate is gatekeepers, of whatever subject. And so I will sound a little bit hypocritical, but one of the things one of my pet peeves is, people that say they like to travel, but they've only been like, you know, around their home city or home province or home state. I mean, everyone has their definition of traveling. That's fine, but I think, and yes, I do sound very hypocritical, but I think that is my pet peeve because traveling is so much more than just driving, down the road to the next city. I mean, if that's the only thing you can like actually think of, and that you can only do because of your means, by all means do it. But once again, there is so much more to travel than that. But so for me, when I say traveling, I actually mean it with all my heart, and not just because not just for the Instagram photos. Of course, that's a big part. But like I and I've said this countless amount of times in the previous episodes. It's just meeting new people and trying new food is gets me going in so many ways. So one of the first travels that I did, like me and my parents and my brother would do family road trips all the time, living in the States, and even when we moved to Canada, we did a whole bunch. But one of my first trips that I did with me and my friends was back in 2016, and December 2016, we did a first pretty much solo group trip down to Las Vegas and California, and I think that's where I really blossomed because, like I said, that's when I took charge planning it and just figuring things out and just like finding different things to do in this city and then the next city, and then finding local places that people recommend or restaurants that are like fancy. Of course, at that time we were still students, so we couldn't afford to go to the highest nicest restaurants, but we still got to do a lot of things. And I think that's where 2016 is really where I credit myself falling in love with traveling, because it showed me that there's so much to do. And not even like, of course I want to visit all the countries in the world. It is impossible, but I would love to do that. But even beyond that, there's so much to do. Even if you take a 8-hour drive to middle of nowhere, you can see so much. Like before I used to think Saskatchewan was so boring, but once you actually get out there and do stuff, there's so much to see. Of course there's more things to do in other places, but you know again, this is going a little bit contradictory again because I said there's not much. I wouldn't consider that traveling, but as long as you learn something, meet new people, try new food, I would consider that a very successful trip.
Hey, yeah, and that is, yeah, I guess it depends like on the position that you're in and all of that. But I think that is true. I think when it comes to traveling, a lot of it, it's like, I guess it comes down to the intent of it. And we can talk about traveling on another episode because, we can add another hour to the podcast just by adding your travel stories into it. So quick, because I know it, but so we gotta keep on moving. There's a lot to know about who Brishank is. Quick rundown on some of the places you've been.
Of course. So, like I said earlier, born in Nepal, lived in New Zealand, raised in the US, and then now in Canada for the last 12 years. But besides that, so my trips, okay, so since I said 2016 is where my trips really started blossoming, 2016 I did the Vegas, California trip. Then 2017 I went to, I love national parks. I don't know if I've said this in previous episodes, but one of my goals is to visit pretty much all the national parks in the US and Canada. So I've been to a fair amount of them, but that's when I really started by going to Yellowstone and Glacier National Park. And of course, Banff and Jasper, you can't forget those. Banff was like almost like a ritual where we went at least 2-3 times a summer. And then since then, it only progressed. So then after that, I graduated or I finished my internship, and then I went on a 2 month trip with my brother. So we did Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Quebec City, then Nepal, then came to DC, New York, and Boston. Finished that, and then I finished. Went back to school, finished my fourth year, graduated, and then I went on a 6 week trip to Singapore, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Australia, Hawaii. Did that. Then 6 months later, I did a 3 weeks road trip down to the States. So we went to Montana, Wyoming, um, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Montana. And, that was super fun because we went through 8 national parks at that time. And it was all driving, me, my brother, and one of my good friends. And then after that, I think that was my last big trip because that was 2019. And then, of course, COVID was, changed my world pretty big time in the travel regard, because it obviously closed all the borders and it made it hard to travel without passports or getting tests done. So it's it's been, pushed back, but that's fine because I still got to travel to the States a couple of times, been out here a couple of times. And, I still, of course, one of my favorite things to do is to plan trips for the future. So always doing that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And I know you've been in so many different places that, pretty sure we can make an entire year with your and my travel experiences. We can cover 40, at least 52 episodes of this podcast. But we will not do that unless our listeners want us to. So we've covered several parts of your life, Rojang. We cover your life journey, your university experience, and how it got shaped you to be an engineer and getting you to Ottawa. We explore that part of your life that people that you really, really enjoy, which is traveling. Now, let's dive a little bit more into you personally and kind of like what you value in terms of life and in terms of friendships. So, when you're meeting new people, Brishank, some of us have different like interactions and certain things click or not. What are some of those things that for you, when you're meeting someone, you're like, yeah, you can see the possibility of a friendship or a relationship moving forward with someone you met for the first time?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest personality traits I look for in whether it's friends or, relationships, I think it's just being real with themselves, being real with me. It's like one of the biggest things I've learned for myself is knowing when to say no or I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing anyone can learn, because a lot of people, and this is even true for like interviews where, the interviewer will ask you a question, and generally if I don't know an answer, I'll straight up be like, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, or I haven't learned that yet, because it shows a sense of realism and that you're not willing to make something up. And it's interviews, it's even more prevalent, because if they ask you something and you try to make something up, the interviews aren't stupid, they'll know when you're making something up, because obviously they'll know the answer. And even with friends, if I ask someone something and they give me an answer, I'm like, that's not it, or like, is that right? That doesn't sound true. And I think that's where, if someone can be real with themselves and be comfortable in, what they know and then they don't know, I think that's the biggest thing that they can show anyone, because it shows us, like I said, it shows a sense of realism and being truthful and honest with yourself.
And man, that just sounds like honestly, that's some of the things I really value about you is that you value truthfulness, but also you're truthful too, uh, to everyone, and you speak your mind, and you're not afraid of that. Which honestly, it is not a trait that you're able to find now in 2021. It's pretty scarce. But with that, as you develop when that relationship start flourishing and everything, what what is it for like in terms of you that besides being seeking for truthfulness, what are some of those things that you kind of like in a certain way just always gravitate to? Like what does Brishan gravitate to in terms of friendships?
I think just being flexible also, because, like I said, I love traveling. So, or even doing like spontaneous trips, or like being spontaneous. Of course, there's a time and place for everything, but I think I hate those people where you have to schedule something in, and it's like, of course, I don't want to say hate in case I offend anyone, and any of them, anyone, my friends, he's like, am I like that? Like, of course, if the shoe fits, but
Okay.
But like the thing is like you don't always have to be super rigid about everything. If something comes up, be like, hey, let's do this, let's do it. Like you don't have to plan something out for forever. And another thing I really value is just being like along with flexibility, it's just some money. I know like finances, it's hard for everyone, and everyone has their level of comfort with finances. But if whether you're traveling or you're just doing like chilling and you want to grab some food, it's kind of a bummer when someone's like, no, I don't want to go for food. Not because they can't afford to do it. It's just because they don't want to spend money, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm the most like rich out there. I am privileged enough to have money and be able to spend it. But at the same time, if you want to do something, just be open for it, be flexible, and just go with the flow.
And what is it to go with the flow? People interpret that a different way.
I think my mom says I'm too go with the flow because I just it's not even that I don't care. It's just like I believe everything happens for a reason, and I just don't. I think this is one of the biggest things that I've learned about myself is I don't really stress too much, and even in like during university years when we'd have a midterm, I just never stressed enough. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's just not. I mean, knowing when to be stressed, I guess, like channeling that energy, because if you're stressed about something, chances are you're gonna mess up even harder, right? So like take a midterm for example. If you're super stressed, you're gonna forget so many things. And I've had this to me before, like when I was super stressed, one of my exams, and I tried to cram everything in and study, and I did so bad because I just blanked out. But some of the other times where I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm stressed, but I can't really do anything about it because the midterms tomorrow. I know a lot of stuff. Let me go to bed, get some rest, and then write the exam. I did a lot better on those than the ones I'm stressed at, because when you're stressed, you're thinking about the stress itself. You're not just getting worried about the exam, but the stress itself. So I think me as a person, I've just learned to like not. It's not saying not let the stress get to me. Sometimes it still does, but not letting it affect as to me as much. So like if something happens, I know like there's so many things in the world that could happen, but just trying to like realize, okay, this happened, how do I proceed from there, or like how do I move on, or like how can I improve the situation if the situation is bad.
Man, I love honestly the positive outcome and viewing that you have in life, and I think that's like a good thing that we complement each other a little bit on that. So it is like nice to hear, and that's honestly one some of the right attitude to have from time to time. So as I mean, we can always, and I know you can always talk about yourself for however long you want, but let's keep on moving. Now, you know, like you said, like lately you've been, and we have a lot of us have been living, day to day, living in how it is, especially given the circumstances we're under. So, but now let's just put it a little bit further into the future. What do you see for Brishank? What does Brishank see like for yourself, buddy? What is it for you like both in short term and in long term? What's next for you?
Short answer, I don't know.
And that's
uh,
completely fine. That's completely fine.
exactly. And a lot of people say that because even when especially in university, a lot of people say they don't know what they want to do. But for me, even past university in the working life, I still don't know what I want to do because, like, as everyone knows, I'm an engineer working as an engineer. I have been working for 3 4 years now, but I don't know what I want in life because, like, I still haven't. And we talked about this a couple of episodes ago, where I still haven't found my true passion yet. Or even if I have in traveling, I don't know how to take that to the next level because as much as I just want to quit my job sometimes, or leave engineering to do travel full time, I just can't pull myself to do that because, of course, finances is where that comes into play, right? You still have to find a way to travel or start a blog, and like we said previously, like it doesn't happen overnight. You actually need to. It takes, like even like people like YouTubers or like Instagram influencers. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight, and like I think that's one of the scariest thing because as much as I want to take risks, sometimes it is hard to do that. So honestly, I don't know. Right now, I am working as an engineer. I do like it, but long term, there's so many things I want to do, but not enough time, right? So let's see. Right now just short term. Get used to Ottawa, work as an engineer. Day to day, get my professional engineering license. Hopefully in the next couple of months, and then long term, we'll see what's what I'm gonna do.
And hey, that's completely fine, and as long as you're taking it and you're putting your energy into that, that's completely fine. And I believe in you, man. I know you'll be able to find that true passion, that you talk about, or work towards it to make it happen. Um, so yeah, and we're always here for you, not only me but everyone listening to you talk about yourself.
Perfect.
All right, so as we're getting up to the end of this, because um, we can talk forever, but sometimes we have to know what when to cut it. So let's do a rapid fire question session just to get to know some other things about you, buddy. So I'll ask you a question, and not a lot of thought has to go into the answer. Sounds good?
Of course.
Alrighty. So favorite color?
Red.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs, definitely.
Favorite kind of food?
This is hard, but I'll have to go with either Thai food or Italian food.
All right. What's your zodiac sign?
Aquarius.
Favorite place in Canada?
It has to be Banff National Park. I love Banff. I miss it. Being in the East Coast, where you don't see many mountains, definitely miss Banff.
Mountains or the beach?
Can I say both? Like, so Vancouver, which has both, I want to say both.
All right, perfect. Car, train, or airplane?
This is easy. I love airplanes, as you well know, as most people know. I love airplanes, so definitely gotta go with airplane.
Spicy or not spicy?
Definitely spicy. I love my spices.
And who is your favorite person in the world right now?
Right now, I'm gonna be a little bit sentimental, so I'm gonna say my parents because they're leaving. As the time of the recording, they're packing to go back to Regina tomorrow, and then my brother, of course.
There you go. Favorite day of the week?
It's Friday then.
Sounds lovely. And go to drink.
Cream soda.
What song you're playing on repeat currently?
It's gotta be the weekend. What's that? Save Your Tears.
Alrighty, there you go, everyone. So good job, Brishank. You were able to answer with not a lot of explanation. I know that was hard for you.
Did I pass?
I think you do pass on that one. But all right, I think this is where we're gonna wrap up. Getting to know Brishank on a more personal and close level with him. Brishank, we love hearing these stories. We love listening and learning what has definitely shaped you to be the amazing person that you are. And I think for our listeners to get to know a little bit more about yourself, so that if you re-listen to some of the podcasts, you can have a little bit more of the perspective of where Brishank comes from and where his opinions and how they got formed. But also just getting to know anyone. It is nice to get to know people on a superficial level, but at the same time, once you go into the deeper levels, that's where you can find the substance of who people are. So you've got to know me, you've got to know Brishank, and I encourage everyone to get to know those people surrounding you that you maybe are like, I really want to know how Bob feels about this, or wanting to get to know more about Lisa's life story. So yeah, definitely encourage everyone to have these conversations because they really, really, really put you in a nice place to get to know everyone. But at the same time, the connection becomes stronger. But that is about it, buddy. Let's move into our last segment or this podcast.
All right, Andreas. What are you looking forward to this upcoming week?
What I'm looking forward for this upcoming week. For this upcoming week, I'm just looking forward to get back and really figure out, get into a routine. Like I have my schedule figured out, but now it's getting into the habit of building that routine. And I know in a week I will not be able to build it up, but slowly getting into that habit of like, this is when I sleep, this is when I do X, Y, and Z. So I'm really looking forward to establishing those life patterns because I believe that is what it really takes in order to be successful, especially during university, is establishing. establishing some of those routines and patterns. But at the same time, getting to know more about my classmates, getting to know them a little bit more, forming those relationships here in Montreal, the place now that I call home, and getting to know them. But and with that, exploring Montreal because a lot of us are new to the city. Well, technically new to the city, so exploring a little bit more of Montreal, and just keep on living life. How about you, man? What are you looking forward for this week?
As I've mentioned in the past episodes, I've been looking to find an apartment, and I think I found a couple. So this week I'm gonna go look at a couple of them. It is expensive, but you know what? Gotta find a place to live sooner or later. So then after that, I'm also looking to get a new car because I think our offices will be going back to work from the office in a month or so. So definitely we'll need a car to get me around. So I know I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, but now I actually like reaching out to places or dealers or things like that. And then it's supposed to rain this whole upcoming week, so probably not do too much. And of course, play Pokemon Go.
There you go. Hope you catch them all. All right, so that is it for this week's episode of the Two Average Brown Bro podcast. Hope you all got into it and really enjoyed listening to Brishank talk a little bit more about himself. And definitely, you can reach out to him. He loves talking about himself, so reach out to him if you ever want to have a personal conversation with him, or if you need advice. He is one of the people I always go to whenever life gets rough or I just want to talk to somebody for advice. But definitely, I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode, getting to know him, just listening to us for the past hour or so. So, Brishang, where can they reach us out?
Absolutely. Like always, if you've got comments, questions, concerns, or any other crybaby stuff, you can reach out to us on the Two Average Brown Rose podcast, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter. Holla at us. If you want to talk to me, you can reach me on my personal Instagram, Champagne Nepali. Of course, it's that. And as always, our DMs are always open. Hit us up for any questions you have, comments, concerns. Or if you just want to vent, like I said, venting to someone always helps. And if you don't have anyone to vent to, or if you just need a third party just to listen, you can always slide into those DMs.
That's about right. So, hope everyone has an amazing week. Hope everyone enjoyed your long weekend because a long weekend. I'm pretty sure it's both in the States and in Canada. So, I hope everyone enjoyed that. But other than that, we'll catch you up next Monday with an episode that if you live in Canada, you will want to catch up and listen up to. So we cannot be more excited to talk about our next week's episode. But other than that, we'll catch you next Monday and have an amazing week. Bye.
See ya.